My father called it the midnight paper. It was exactly what its name suggested, a strange newspaper that would appear at certain houses at midnight. For my house, it arrived every Wednesday and Friday, but for other homes, it could be on different nights. I loved listening to my father talk about it. We'd often sit in his office late for me back then, but I only ever heard about it. I never saw the paper myself. My father never told me any of the stories supposedly printed in it either. So, after a while, I lost interest. I grew up and forgot about it until now. Afterward, I decided to stay at my parents' house for a while, deal with the bills, and figure out what to do with the enormous pile of personal belongings that no one would likely want. That day was a Friday. In the blink of an eye, it was midnight. I was awake in my father's office, diligently going through a stack of unpaid medical bills when I heard a sound, 3 knocks on the front door. I looked at the clock, exactly midnight. It was true. I went to the front door, peered through the peephole. Nothing. No one. A series of theories raced through my mind. Maybe it was just a kid playing a prank, knocking and running away. But why didn't they ring the doorbell? I unlocked the front door and slowly pulled it open. There on the doormat was a newspaper. At least to me, it looked like a newspaper. Slowly, cautiously, I picked it up, just with my fingertips, as if it were coated in something poisonous. The paper was completely black. Both the newspaper and the strings holding it rolled up were black. Then, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I brought it inside. I sat down at my father's desk with a knife from the kitchen. I used it to cut the knots on the black strings, and the newspaper slowly unrolled itself. It was very thin, actually just 1 page. On that single page, in large, bold white letters, was the headline, "The Midnight Paper." That was the title on the page, and below it, the story was written as follows: Life and Death on the Edge of a Building. Urban Legend or Dangerous Social Media Challenge. You might not have heard of it, but your children probably have. There's a strange building on the edge of town, about 15 stories high, and its rooftop holds a terrifying secret. The tenants there know the story well. Last December, a girl our editorial team chooses not to disclose her name attempted to end her life by jumping from the rooftop onto the cold asphalt street below, a distance of about 150 feet or over 45 meters. A tragic event, but sadly not uncommon. However, if you believe what's on online forums and instant messages, this was no ordinary suicide. Not because of the circumstances that led to the decision, but because of what happened when the girl climbed over the railing, the boundary separating the safe concrete slab from the deadly fall. The moment she lifted 1 foot off the edge of the building, something strange happened. A series of images flooded her mind. Her father crying in her room, surrounded by her belongings. Then her funeral, friends in suits and dresses, pain and sadness etched on their faces. Then her own body, what was left of it, twisted, broken, swollen, and crudely stitched, yet still stuffed into a dress. The girl put her foot back down on the edge, stunned enough to snap out of her suicidal intent. But then, for some reason, perhaps to test if those images were merely imagination, she lifted her foot again. This time the images returned, but they were different. She saw herself in a graduation gown. She saw herself in a college dorm. She saw herself with a boy. She jumped back to the safety of the railing and went down the stairs, a longer way, a safer way. She told a friend, who joked about it and told others, who then told a few more people. You know how it goes, someone posted it online, and then the internet inflated the story. That building became millions of other buildings in millions of different towns, and for some reason, people started trying it. They gathered in groups to play what later became known as the building edge game. If you stand on the edge of the rooftop, outside the railing, and lift 1 foot, you can see your own future. One such group tried it, and the consequences were horrific. One of the girls in the group volunteered first. She climbed over the railing, lifted 1 foot, and immediately regretted it. Her friends recounted that she began screaming, her eyes wide, staring into the distant void as if seeing something terrifying. Then those eyes turned to her friends. She tried to grab one of them, as if wanting to pull them down with her, to take them along in her fall. The funeral was held with grieving friends and a closed coffin, much like what the first girl had seen. Instead of deterring other teenagers from trying the game, the news quickly became its own urban legend, gradually becoming an integral part of the original story. But one thing many people couldn't stop wondering: what did that girl see? Whatever it was terrifying enough for her to forget the prospect of her own funeral, as well as her mutilated body. Whatever it was terrifying enough to make her try to drag her friend along. Some say she wanted to save her friend from a fate even more horrible than death. Perhaps we will never know, or perhaps, like some versions of the story, sooner or later, we will all know. Because before she jumped, the girl pointed to the sky as if she could see something no one else could. That was the only story in this single midnight paper. I wanted to know more. I wanted to know who wrote it, who published it, who delivered it to homes. And I knew, as if a dangerous, intoxicating knowledge possessed me, that all I needed to do to know more was to wait for the next edition to be placed on the doormat, and I would return here to tell you what it said. The first midnight paper, the one that arrived last Friday night, had somehow vanished. I had stored it in a drawer in my father's office, and now it was gone. Either someone broke in and stole it, or it vanished on its own. I don't know. It sounds absurd, but this whole thing was already absurd. Maybe it just vanished on its own. After last time, I wanted to be prepared. Tonight, I placed a chair right next to the front door and waited anxiously from 11 p.m. Every time a car drove by, every time a leaf rustled on the pavement, I immediately rushed to the peephole. Nothing. Time crawled, stretching endlessly. I had felt this before, like when ordering something online that I desperately wanted and knew today was the delivery day, but this time was different. There was something wrong about this paper. If anyone else has ever received it, you'd understand the feeling of looking at something that shouldn't be seen, as if it seeped through every crack, defied every rigid rule of everyday life, and found its way to you. Holding it felt like touching a physical manifestation of a mistake. I imagine it's like touching radioactive material. Every second it's near you, it seems to warp the very roots of your life. 11:55 p.m., it was almost here. My heart pounded, anticipation coursing through my body like a drug. I stood right in front of the peephole, not wanting to miss a second. I looked out at the front porch. The street outside was dark. The steps were only dimly lit by the light above the doorframe. I had moved the doormat back a bit so I could see it clearly through the peephole. And then it happened. The light on the doorframe began to flicker, slowly at first, then faster. Suddenly, it went out completely. The entire porch was plunged into darkness, only a faint glow from the streetlights outside. Somehow, the dark area around my doorstep was even blacker than the rest, as if it swallowed every tiny ray of light. Then the light came back on. Through the peephole, I saw the porch was normal again. The bulb above the doorframe shone steadily, as if nothing had happened. I rushed out, my fingers fumbling with the lock, then pulling the front door open. The porch was empty. The street was empty. 1 second passed, 2 seconds. All the normal sounds around me began to fade in. I bent down to look at the doormat, and there it was, a roll of black paper, tightly bound with black string. I hesitated for a moment before picking it up. Should I bring it inside? Should I read it right out here, or should I not read it at all? In the end, I still picked it up. I had already read one. That boundary had been crossed. I carried the paper into my father's office and placed it on the desk. The knife from the kitchen was still there. Everything was ready. I just needed to read it. I took the knife, cut the strings, and watched the paper slowly unfurl like a strange flower. Immediately, the white letters caught my eye, and I began to read. This time, there were several pages, including the cover, but still only one story. This is what was printed on those black pages. The removal doctor. Police warn of dangerous individual after reports of strange encounters. Following a series of reports about an individual known as the removal doctor, local police are urging residents to avoid strangers who approach them in public and to stay away from all abandoned buildings. It all began a few months ago. The first report appeared on an online forum dedicated to sharing interactions with mysterious strangers, and this story certainly fit the criteria for strange. An anonymous user stated that she was walking through a public park just before closing time when a man approached her and introduced himself as the removal doctor. The woman recalled that at the time, the man appeared professional, trustworthy, and possessed a strange, persuasive power. The man handed her a business card and then walked away. She had lost the card, but according to her, both sides of the card only displayed an address. The next day, she decided to check the address. She entered it into her map application and arrived at the location, only to find that the building had been long abandoned. Undeterred, she found an open door and entered. The rest became internet history. Inside the building, she encountered a scene that resembled a modern clinic: clean epoxy floors, white-painted walls, and tarpaulins covering broken windows. There were even fluorescent lights hanging from the ceiling. This site was far from the murder room she imagined when seeing the abandoned place, but now her mind began to consider the possibility of an organ trafficking ring. She was half right. The woman recounted that at the end of the building, she saw a clinic door. She knocked and was invited in. What greeted her was a consultation office identical to a high-end hospital. There were multiple doors leading to other rooms. She saw one room labeled CAT scan, another labeled dental. In the center of the room was a table, and sitting behind it was the man she had met in the park. The woman couldn't clearly describe his appearance, only that he wore a white lab coat and a surgical mask covering his face. The man didn't beat around the bush, reintroducing himself as the removal doctor and explaining that he specialized in removing things from people's bodies. "Anything you can think of," he said. The woman was clearly distrustful and somewhat frightened, but the man reassured her that this was a voluntary and potentially life-saving procedure. The doctor then asked her to name something about herself that she was unhappy with. A memory, a body part, an annoying habit, anything, even a tumor or a terminal illness like cancer or clogged arteries. Online, the woman confessed that she wasn't thinking clearly at the time. After all, she was ignoring a million warning signs, something many urban legends always mention, like waking up in a bathtub full of ice and realizing your kidneys have been stolen. Fortunately, that didn't happen to her, and according to what's been told, it hasn't happened to anyone else who met that man. At least, no bathtubs full of ice. She decided not to request the removal of anything physical, perhaps fearing that someone was lurking, ready to act the moment she spoke. However, she said she wanted to get rid of her paralyzing procrastination. The doctor nodded as if he had anticipated her answer and explained that it was a trade. He would take away what she didn't want, but he had the right to choose anything of hers in return. The woman hesitated but finally agreed, allowing him to lead her into a private examination room. She recounted that a few hours later, she woke up right in that building, but everything around her had changed completely. The floor was just dirty concrete, the walls had peeling paint, and there was no clinic or medical equipment at all. She wrote that she immediately chastised herself for falling into a trap even a child would recognize. After quickly checking for any incisions or wounds, she found no marks on her skin, not even a bruise. She said it was only a few days later that she realized something had truly happened in that building. She was normally an average writer, needing hours of YouTube and mobile games before she could start working. But now, she could sit down and focus immediately. It seemed true that the removal doctor had surgically removed her procrastination. She was incredibly excited, but only at first. Not long after, she realized something was wrong. First, it was when she video chatted with her sister and her newborn nephew. Then, when her girlfriend came to her apartment. Finally, she confirmed her fears in the bathroom mirror. No matter how hard or for how long she tried, she was completely unable to smile. Dozens of doctor's appointments later, the cause remained a mystery. Some said it might be a mild form of facial paralysis due to stress, but I know better, she wrote. She was convinced the culprit was the removal doctor. "I hate him," she wrote in her post. "Everyone used to say I had the most beautiful smile, now it's gone." But why take her smile? She recounted the last moments before losing consciousness. The moment the removal doctor injected her with the anesthetic, she saw a room in the corner with a slightly open door, and she saw a gurney covered with a blanket. Clearly, based on its size and the swollen shape beneath the blanket, it was a person, but their form was very strange. "Parts were missing," she wrote. "The shape wasn't right, but there was definitely a head and two legs." Along the far wall were jars containing all sorts of body parts. Some nights, she recounted, she dreamed of returning to that strange clinic. Some nights she was convinced she recalled parts of what happened while she was unconscious. She saw, through blurry eyes, gruesome surgical instruments. She heard him muttering to himself. She heard him say that something or someone was almost complete. Other stories about the removal doctor's patients also emerged. One man stated that he asked the doctor to remove his nicotine addiction and had his tongue removed as well. Another man wanted to remove his fear of heights and lost his ability to drive. Someone with a brain tumor asked for its removal and woke up without a leg. A woman who wanted to cure her depression lost one of her eyes. There were even posts suggesting that a missing person found headless was a victim of the removal doctor. However, when asked if that person had requested anything removed, the anonymous poster couldn't answer. If so, what that person wanted removed must have been very significant. Perhaps it was something he shared with many others, like a fear or a financial burden. There were countless speculations in these stories, but the common thread between the headless corpse and all other cases was that in all incidents, there were no stitches, no wounds, no cuts. Whatever he took, it was as if it had never existed. This baffled both law enforcement and the medical community when investigating the reports. Our newspaper wants to reiterate the police department's offer. If a man approaches you, hands you a business card, and claims to be the removal doctor, leave immediately and call 911 as soon as you are safe to report it. Under no circumstances should you go to the address on the card. Under no circumstances should you ask for anything to be removed from your body or personality, because you will lose something else. I put the paper down, my mind overwhelmed by a disorder spreading through me like a strange infection. My heart pounded faster again. I knew something was wrong, not just because of what was printed on the page or how it was delivered. After a few online searches, I confirmed I was right. There were no reports of a removal doctor or a building edge game. So why did those posts mention their appearance on the internet and in the media? Was the author of these articles just making it up? I still wasn't sure, but it didn't feel that way. The stories didn't seem fake. They felt very real, as if they were happening somewhere very close to me. I decided to take some photos of the newspaper with my phone and realized it wasn't easy. It was as if something on the page reacted badly to the lens. I tried with the flash on, flash off, but the results were equally ruined. The photo was damaged no matter what I did. If what my father said was true, I had made a grave mistake. Never read it, he used to tell me. I would ask why, but he wouldn't answer. He'd just change the subject or blurt out, "Don't, because I said so." Eventually, I thought he was just trying to scare me, and I forgot about it. Now, I wish I had asked him more about the midnight paper, about why I should never read it, about whether I should touch it or bring it into the house. All I knew was that my father said the paper would arrive on Wednesdays and Fridays at our house. That meant tonight, Friday, there would be another one. The feeling was early, suffocating, but I would continue. It disappeared. The first midnight paper, the one that arrived last Friday night, had somehow vanished. I had stored it in a drawer in my father's office, and now it was gone. Either someone broke in and stole it, or it vanished on its own. I don't know. It sounds absurd, but this whole thing was already absurd. Maybe it just vanished on its own. After last time, I wanted to be prepared. Tonight, I placed a chair right next to the front door and waited anxiously from 11 p.m. Every time a car drove by, every time a leaf rustled on the pavement, I immediately rushed to the peephole. Nothing. Time crawled, stretching endlessly. I had felt this before, like when ordering something online that I desperately wanted and knew today was the delivery day, but this time was different. There was something wrong about this paper. If anyone else has ever received it, you'd understand the feeling of looking at something that shouldn't be seen, as if it seeped through every crack, defied every rigid rule of everyday life, and found its way to you. Holding it felt like touching a physical manifestation of a mistake. I imagine it's like touching radioactive material. Every second it's near you, it seems to warp the very roots of your life. 11:55 p.m., it was almost here. My heart pounded, anticipation coursing through my body like a drug. I stood right in front of the peephole, not wanting to miss a second. I looked out at the front porch. The street outside was dark. The steps were only dimly lit by the light above the doorframe. I had moved the doormat back a bit so I could see it clearly through the peephole. And then it happened. The light on the doorframe began to flicker, slowly at first, then faster. Suddenly, it went out completely. The entire porch was plunged into darkness, only a faint glow from the streetlights outside. Somehow, the dark area around my doorstep was even blacker than the rest, as if it swallowed every tiny ray of light. Then the light came back on. Through the peephole, I saw the porch was normal again. The bulb above the doorframe shone steadily, as if nothing had happened. I rushed out, my fingers fumbling with the lock, then pulling the front door open. The porch was empty. The street was empty. 1 second passed, 2 seconds. All the normal sounds around me began to fade in. I bent down to look at the doormat, and there it was, a roll of black paper, tightly bound with black string. I hesitated for a moment before picking it up. Should I bring it inside? Should I read it right out here, or should I not read it at all? In the end, I still picked it up. I had already read one. That boundary had been crossed. I carried the paper into my father's office and placed it on the desk. The knife from the kitchen was still there. Everything was ready. I just needed to read it. I took the knife, cut the strings, and watched the paper slowly unfurl like a strange flower. Immediately, the white letters caught my eye and I began to read. This time, there were several pages, including the cover, but still only one story. This is what was printed on those black pages. The removal doctor. Police warn of dangerous individual after reports of strange encounters. Following a series of reports about an individual known as the removal doctor, local police are urging residents to avoid strangers who approach them in public and to stay away from all abandoned buildings. It all began a few months ago. The first report appeared on an online forum dedicated to sharing interactions with mysterious strangers, and this story certainly fit the criteria for strange. An anonymous user stated that she was walking through a public park just before closing time when a man approached her and introduced himself as the removal doctor. The woman recalled that at the time, the man appeared professional, trustworthy, and possessed a strange persuasive power. The man handed her a business card and then walked away. She had lost the card, but according to her, both sides of the card only displayed an address. The next day, she decided to check the address. She entered it into her map application and arrived at the location, only to find that the building had been long abandoned. Undeterred, she found an open door and entered. The rest became internet history. Inside the building, she encountered a scene that resembled a modern clinic: clean epoxy floors, white-painted walls, and tarpaulins covering broken windows. There were even fluorescent lights hanging from the ceiling. This site was far from the murder room she imagined when seeing the abandoned place, but now her mind began to consider the possibility of an organ trafficking ring. She was half right. The woman recounted that at the end of the building, she saw a clinic door. She knocked and was invited in. What greeted her was a consultation office identical to a high-end hospital. There were multiple doors leading to other rooms. She saw one room labeled CAT scan, another labeled dental. In the center of the room was a table, and sitting behind it was the man she had met in the park. The woman couldn't clearly describe his appearance, only that he wore a white lab coat and a surgical mask covering his face. The man didn't beat around the bush, reintroducing himself as the removal doctor and explaining that he specialized in removing things from people's bodies. "Anything you can think of," he said. The woman was clearly distrustful and somewhat frightened, but the man reassured her that this was a voluntary and potentially life-saving procedure. The doctor then asked her to name something about herself that she was unhappy with. A memory, a body part, an annoying habit, anything, even a tumor or a terminal illness like cancer or clogged arteries. Online, the woman confessed that she wasn't thinking clearly at the time. After all, she was ignoring a million warning signs, something many urban legends always mention, like waking up in a bathtub full of ice and realizing your kidneys have been stolen. Fortunately, that didn't happen to her, and according to what's been told, it hasn't happened to anyone else who met that man. At least, no bathtubs full of ice. She decided not to request the removal of anything physical, perhaps fearing that someone was lurking, ready to act the moment she spoke. However, she said she wanted to get rid of her paralyzing procrastination. The doctor nodded as if he had anticipated her answer and explained that it was a trade. He would take away what she didn't want, but he had the right to choose anything of hers in return. The woman hesitated but finally agreed, allowing him to lead her into a private examination room. She recounted that a few hours later, she woke up right in that building, but everything around her had changed completely. The floor was just dirty concrete, the walls had peeling paint, and there was no clinic or medical equipment at all. She wrote that she immediately chastised herself for falling into a trap even a child would recognize. After quickly checking for any incisions or wounds, she found no marks on her skin, not even a bruise. She said it was only a few days later that she realized something had truly happened in that building. She was normally an average writer, needing hours of YouTube and mobile games before she could start working. But now, she could sit down and focus immediately. It seemed true that the removal doctor had surgically removed her procrastination. She was incredibly excited, but only at first. Not long after, she realized something was wrong. First, it was when she video chatted with her sister and her newborn nephew. Then, when her girlfriend came to her apartment. Finally, she confirmed her fears in the bathroom mirror. No matter how hard or for how long she tried, she was completely unable to smile. Dozens of doctors' appointments later, the cause remained a mystery. Some said it might be a mild form of facial paralysis due to stress, but I know better, she wrote. She was convinced the culprit was the removal doctor. I hate him, she wrote in her post. Everyone used to say I had the most beautiful smile, now it's gone. But why take her smile? She recounted the last moments before losing consciousness. The moment the removal doctor injected her with the anesthetic, she saw a room in the corner with a slightly open door, and she saw a gurney covered with a blanket. Clearly, based on its size and the swollen shape beneath the blanket, it was a person, but their form was very strange. Parts were missing, she wrote. The shape wasn't right, but there was definitely a head and 2 legs. Along the far wall were jars containing all sorts of body parts. Some nights, she recounted, she dreamed of returning to that strange clinic. Some nights she was convinced she recalled parts of what happened while she was unconscious. She saw, through blurry eyes, gruesome surgical instruments. She heard him muttering to himself. She heard him say that something or someone was almost complete. Other stories about the removal doctor's patients also emerged. One man stated that he asked the doctor to remove his nicotine addiction and had his tongue removed as well. Another man wanted to remove his fear of heights and lost his ability to drive. Someone with a brain tumor asked for its removal and woke up without a leg. A woman who wanted to cure her depression lost one of her eyes. There were even posts suggesting that a missing person found headless was a victim of the removal doctor. However, when asked if that person had requested anything removed, the anonymous poster couldn't answer. If so, what that person wanted removed must have been very significant. Perhaps it was something he shared with many others, like a fear or a financial burden. There were countless speculations in these stories, but the common thread between the headless corpse and all other cases was that in all incidents, there were no stitches, no wounds, no cuts. Whatever he took, it was as if it had never existed. This baffled both law enforcement and the medical community when investigating the reports. Our newspaper wants to reiterate the police department's offer. If a man approaches you, hands you a business card, and claims to be the removal doctor, leave immediately and call 911 as soon as you are safe to report it. Under no circumstances should you go to the address on the card. Under no circumstances should you ask for anything to be removed from your body or personality, because you will lose something else. I put the paper down, my mind overwhelmed by a disorder spreading through me like a strange infection. My heart pounded faster again. I knew something was wrong, not just because of what was printed on the page or how it was delivered. After a few online searches, I confirmed I was right. There were no reports of a removal doctor or a building edge game. So why did those posts mention their appearance on the internet and in the media? Was the author of these articles just making it up? I still wasn't sure, but it didn't feel that way. The stories didn't seem fake. They felt very real, as if they were happening somewhere very close to me. I decided to take some photos of the newspaper with my phone and realized it wasn't easy. It was as if something on the page reacted badly to the lens. I tried with the flash on, flash off, but the results were equally ruined. The photo was damaged no matter what I did. If what my father said was true, I had made a grave mistake. Never read it, he used to tell me. I would ask why, but he wouldn't answer. He just changed the subject or blurt out, "Don't, because I said so." Eventually, I thought he was just trying to scare me, and I forgot about it. Now, I wish I had asked him more about the midnight paper, about why I should never read it, about whether I should touch it or bring it into the house. All I knew was that my father said the paper would arrive on Wednesdays and Fridays at our house. That meant tonight, Friday, there would be another one. The feeling was early, suffocating, but I would continue. After the second paper arrived last Wednesday night, I decided to keep a very close eye on it. I tried to take more photos, but it seemed that attempting the first one had broken my phone's camera. I'm trying to figure out how to fix it. I placed the second midnight paper on a desk and stared at it, looking for even the slightest change. Hours passed, my eyes grew heavy. A feeling of exhaustion seemed to invade every cell of my body, heavy as lead. It wasn't until 5 a.m. on Thursday that I started to see something strange. Thin wisps of black smoke rose from the black pages. I leaned closer, covering my nose and mouth with a mask to avoid inhaling the smoke. It seemed the black paper itself was slowly burning away, but there was no fire. The page was just gradually curling and then disintegrating into fine smoke right before my eyes. My phone rang, work was calling. I ignored it. I had to keep watching. By noon, the cover page was gone. The pages underneath had also begun to curl. By 10 p.m., only one page remained, and by midnight on Thursday, it had completely vanished. Just one day. The newspaper existed for exactly 24 hours, then turned into smoke. Suddenly, I felt lucky that I had taken that photo, despite my phone camera being broken. I went to bed and dreamed of black smoke and white ink. Friday was almost here. Another paper would arrive right at midnight. I wasn't ready for another one. I was tired, scared, but also strangely excited. This was bizarre in a way I had never experienced before, as if a secret, invisible world always lurked behind my mundane daily life, and now that I had accidentally discovered it, I didn't want to go back to how things were. I wasn't reprimanded at work, but when I logged in to work on Friday, the atmosphere was a bit tense. Whatever. They wouldn't understand. I wanted to see how they would react if they also received a midnight paper at their doorstep. 11:50 p.m. I sat on the front porch, the door closed behind me. The doormat was a few steps away. I had replaced the light bulb above me with a new one, just in case. By 11:55, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, as if there was a strange electric current in the air. There was also a chill. The cold sensation seemed to penetrate my skin, as if it were wrapping around my bones. At 11:58, I suddenly had a metallic taste in my mouth, as if I were holding a coin. At 11:59, my eyes began to sting and water, as if I were standing too close to a fire. Then it happened. The light bulb didn't flicker, it just went out with a sudden pop asterisk. I was ready. My phone was in my hand. With just a few taps, I turned on the flashlight. At that exact moment, a patch of darkness, darker than any darkness around, appeared right on the doormat. I shone my flashlight on it, and just as I caught sight of the black rolled-up paper, my phone in my hand suddenly went from cold to burning hot. In an instant, I dropped it. I heard the sound of glass shattering. Strangely, I heard the shattering before it even hit the ground. The air around me seemed to disappear. I couldn't breathe in oxygen, couldn't breathe anything at all. My eyes bulged, my throat convulsed in protest. Then the lights came back on and everything ended. The air around me was normal again. For a few seconds, I coughed violently. I gasped for oxygen. I swallowed gulps of air, my head spinning. The black tentacles of a migraine began to tighten around my brain like a vice. I struggled. I needed to see if the newspaper was still there. I needed to know if my interference had made it disappear. I breathed a sigh of relief. It was still there. The same black roll of paper, tightly bound with black string. I carried it into my father's office, used the knife to cut the strings, and unfurled the rolled-up pages. Again, only one article, but this time longer. Here's what was printed on those black pages. The new student, jailed teacher recounts bizarre story. Former English teacher Mark Bailey, convicted of murder last winter, sat in the visitation room of a high-security prison. He looked gaunt, pale, haunted, a far cry from the healthy young man who used to appear regularly on millions of TV and phone screens across the country. Bailey seemed to have everything. He had taught at Roslyn High School for nearly a decade. He was beloved by many students, many of whom said he helped them find their passion for literature. He was also the coach for both Roslyn High's girls' volleyball team and the town's youth baseball team. He was married to his high school sweetheart, Holly Bailey, a preschool teacher. On the surface, his life was not only normal but inspiring. Everyone knew that instead of going to Europe or Hawaii for their honeymoon, he and Holly had joined the Peace Corps to volunteer in Africa. So what happened? What turned the Mark Bailey of 5 years ago, a beloved coach and active philanthropist, into the Mark Bailey of today, who has to be separated from other inmates for his own safety? The answer has a name: Stephanie Carson. Carson was a 12th grade student at Herx High School, known for her intelligence, a star on the girls' volleyball team, and accepted into a number of Ivy League schools. Stephanie's promising life was cut short when, after weeks of being stalked to the point where she had to get a restraining order, Bailey broke into the Carson family home and attacked her with a knife. Bailey's trial was swift, with overwhelming incriminating evidence that left no room for doubt. Despite this, many online spoke in his defense, citing his disjointed, bizarre testimony as evidence of mental illness. "You don't understand," Bailey said to the court. "She's not who you think she is, you'll see. Just wait until the new school year. If only I had more time, perhaps I could have ended this." When reminded that she had passed away, Bailey became agitated, uttering a string of bizarre remarks and accusations, mostly directed at her parents. It took months of constant obstruction by a court-appointed psychologist before we finally secured an interview with him. Sitting behind the glass in a baggy beige prison uniform, Bailey spoke through the phone attached to the window. His voice was weak and distorted. Almost immediately, as if knowing what we had come to ask, he poured out his story. Her name was Monica Campbell at first. I still think of her by that name. She was the new student that year. She said she'd moved from California and was immediately loved by everyone. Beautiful, wealthy family, top grades in every subject, a 4 GPA. She came to her first volleyball practice, and everyone could see she would be the best player on the team. She also took my English class and seemed to know more than I did. She could quote Yeats instantly, but Oscar Wilde was her favorite author. She got into Yale and Stanford, eventually choosing Yale for chemistry. Brilliant. She was even crowned homecoming queen. There was something about her, like a spark. Monica was almost too bright, strangely intelligent. She seemed to learn everything so quickly and remembered every detail. Later, my car broke down at school. There must have been a dozen teachers gathered to help. Mr. Harrison, the science teacher, was fumbling with the engine when Monica walked up. She looked down, rolled up her sleeves like a mechanic, and started working. She fixed it right away. The car started instantly. She seemed to know Japanese, German, French, Spanish. We only confirmed Spanish and French, but she spoke those two fluently. Some teachers cried when she left school, saying they would miss her laughter in the hallways. She made a strong impression, clearly. As for her parents, I don't know. I remember her mother coming to school once or twice, dressed as if for the Oscar red carpet or something, but never appeared again. Her father never did, not even at graduation. Monica was the valedictorian. The next year, things got strange. The first semester had just begun, and there was another new student. Her name was Natalie Creed. She said she'd moved from California. Immediately popular, beautiful, wealthy family, always at the top of her classes, a 4 GPA. She joined her first volleyball practice, and everyone could see she would become the best player on the team. She also took my English class and knew more Shakespeare than I did. Emily Dickinson was her favorite author. And she looked exactly like Monica. Everyone asked if they were related. She denied it, but rumors still swirled. Maybe they were long-lost sisters. Her parents also never came to school. She was also valedictorian, also homecoming queen. She got into Harvard and NYU, then chose Harvard for chemistry. It sounded too strange. People said so too, but then they forgot. I was the only one who kept saying how odd this was. People started looking at me as if I were crazy, or worse, so I dropped it. The year after that, we had a volleyball match with another school, and she appeared again. This time, her name wasn't Monica or Natalie, but Jennifer Cook. She was the best player on that team, better than anyone on our team. I knew something was wrong, but just asking about her made everyone look at me as if I were sick. There had been plenty of stories of teachers being infatuated with students for the wrong reasons, so everyone was suspicious. But for me, it wasn't like that. She was exactly as before, behaved as before, still wanted to study chemistry, so I followed her home. It was one of the biggest mansions in town, and our town on Long Island was no stranger to them. Not the exact same house as Monica's, but just as grand. And then I saw her mother, the same woman who had appeared when Monica was in school. I knew something was wrong, but when I told my wife, she said I was crazy. I wasn't supposed to follow students, let alone sneak into their homes. I was a teacher, after all. The school year ended. When the new school year began, I went looking for her. I went to every school in the area and found her. Now her name was Stephanie Carson. She looked exactly like Jennifer Cook, exactly like Natalie Creed, exactly like Monica Campbell. Not just her appearance, but her way of speaking, her gait, her way of playing volleyball, all identical. I followed her home again. This time it was a different house, but still in the same tax bracket. I waited until nightfall and snuck in. A window was wide open. There were no family photos on the walls, only abstract art. The house was furnished, not like a staged empty house. They must have actually moved in. No one was home, so I searched everywhere. I had to find an explanation. A door led down to the basement, and there I saw it, like a mad scientist's lab, machines I had never seen. A wall-sized freezer filled with Petri dishes and frozen test tubes. Then some strange books, astronomy, occultism, demonology. Then she snuck up behind me silently. She must have hit me with something because I passed out. I woke up in the hospital, handcuffed to a gurney. The police were there, my wife wasn't. They said Monica, or Stephanie, had filed a restraining order against me, that I had been stalking her for weeks. They didn't mention my breaking in. Maybe she didn't want them to. When I got home, my wife wasn't there. She didn't answer her phone either. A few weeks later, I returned to the house at 4 a.m. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew she would be asleep. Maybe I could make her confess something. I wasn't thinking clearly anymore. I broke in again through the same window. I went down to the basement and it was empty, completely empty. Just concrete floor and drag marks, signs that things had been moved. I went upstairs. She must have hidden everything just to make me look worse. I could imagine her smirking as she had those things moved. I went to the second floor. I thought her room would be a small one, but when I opened the door, everything was wrong. There were 2 sets of clothes in the closet. The bathroom was like it was for 2 people. It was her parents' room. I checked the other small room, it was empty. Nothing on the walls, nothing on the carpeted floor, nothing in the closet. Only the largest room was left. Why would they give the master bedroom to their child? I opened the door. She was sitting on the bed, waiting for me, smiling. I asked her who she really was. I said I knew she had been in my class, on the volleyball team I coached at my school. She only said one thing, enough to drive me insane. That wasn't me. I dragged her off the bed, pulled her down the stairs. I was going to make her look at the basement, understand? But it was all wrong. She was faster than me, stronger even. She pried my fingers apart and ran into the kitchen. Then she just stood there by the knife block as if provoking me. I grabbed a knife. She smiled again, so I stabbed her. And then again, and again. She was still smiling when the police arrived. Afterward, they said she had called them, that she had managed to escape for a few seconds to call from the bathroom. But that was a lie. She must have called them before I went up to her parents' room. Her parents attended the trial, and that's when I knew. They didn't look sad, just annoyed, as if I had broken one of their toys. Her parents, you understand? They were behind this. I should have waited for them to come back. I should have killed them instead of her. Bailey became distraught as the interview neared its end, like a man adrift at sea watching his ship disappear over the horizon. Listen, you're still young. Go to every high school on Long Island. You have to find her. She'll be there. Blonde hair, blue eyes, she's probably about to graduate again. Follow her home, ask her parents. Make them tell you the truth. You have to know why. Bailey was found dead in his cell a few days later. He had bitten through both of his wrists. The wounds were too severe, causing him to bleed out before reaching the infirmary. No one in this editorial office carried out his final plea, and we advise our readers not to either. I read the newspaper several times. Long Island wasn't too far from where I lived, but I had never heard of this case. A murder like that. A trial like that, involving a teacher and a student. Surely I would have known. By the time I finished reading, it was almost 2 a.m. I knelt by my bed, my mind still swirling with images of the black pages and the shadow that had placed them at my doorstep. For most of Saturday, I sat at my computer, typing various keywords like Mark Bailey and the names he mentioned in the article. Nothing. Only thousands of Facebook profiles. No news articles, no headlines, no memorial pages. Yesterday, I shifted my focus to the previous 2 articles. I scoured the internet, finding only medical advertising pages and mysterious urban games. No mention of the Building Edge game. No, removal doctor. I decided to go for a walk. It was late, almost midnight, but I didn't need to worry. The next paper wouldn't arrive until Wednesday. I walked towards the affluent part of town, where new buildings and shops frequently popped up. A cold wind blew on my forehead, where another migraine was beginning to bud. Then I saw it. Something so prominent, so obvious, that the pain vanished, if only for a moment of shock. It was one of the newly built apartment buildings from last year, now heavily occupied. From a distance, I saw alternating bright and dark windows, nothing unusual, until I looked up at the roof. A tiny figure stood on the edge of the rooftop, on the building's ledge. I rushed towards the building. I was about a block away then. I didn't think about the distance, about the height difference, or about how my voice couldn't possibly reach the rooftop. I only thought about that silhouette and how it almost perfectly matched what I had imagined when reading the first midnight paper. The building's lobby was dark. The reception desk seemed empty. The two glass doors didn't move. There was an electronic card scanner on the wall. I couldn't get in. I stepped back, standing in the middle of the street. I looked up and still saw the small silhouette, the shape of a person standing on the roof's ledge, trembling in the strong wind. They were standing on one foot, the other dangling over the edge. I opened my mouth to scream, but the sound choked in my throat because the person had already become a blur. I closed my eyes, but I still felt it more clearly than hearing it. It wasn't just a asterisk thud, nor just a asterisk crack. It was something you felt deep in your bones, something that punched you in the gut and drained all sensation from your legs. When I opened my eyes, I couldn't bring myself to look at the body. I only watched the crimson trails seeping down into the drain. The building edge game, it was real. Now it was real. 11:50 p.m. This time, I sat behind the front door. The past few days had been bad enough for me to be a little more cautious. I was still taking aspirin to ward off the migraine that had started the moment the porch light went out last Friday night. I didn't want to risk it again. Many commenters advised me not to stand outside when the paper arrived, suggesting that might be what made the building edge game a reality. I didn't know. Some also said that my reading these papers had changed everything, but I couldn't stop. Not yet. I needed to read the papers to understand, to know what my father had known and how it had affected him. I had been distant from my father. My mother's funeral had deeply hurt him, hurt all of us. After that, he became withdrawn, not even wanting me to visit for Thanksgiving or Christmas. One thing he said back then, something I kept thinking about, was, "It's my fault." Did he mean the midnight paper? Did he think reading it had caused something to happen to my mother? Now he was gone too. The doctor said he had multiple injuries, some healed, some fresh. They suspected he had self-harmed or had some kind of mental breakdown. When I came here, most of the mirrors in the house were covered, removed, or shattered. TV screens were wrapped in cardboard and covered with blankets. I was still going through my father's notebooks. There were hundreds of them, most of them nonsensical, just disconnected scribbles, very hard to decipher because of his handwriting. 11:59 p.m. It was time. Once again, I didn't feel ready. Once again, I felt like I was doing something foolish, but I had no other choice. Exactly at midnight, the porch light flickered off. Through the keyhole, I saw the familiar patch of darkness forming on the doormat. I blinked. The light came back on, and there it was, as always, a brand new edition of the midnight paper. I opened the front door and paused. I looked at the black rolled-up paper with a wary respect, like facing a dangerous animal or a hunting machine. You wouldn't dare put your hand near a meat grinder. You wouldn't dare grab a rat or a badger with your bare hands. Yet I still stepped forward and picked up the midnight paper. The moment I felt the paper touch my skin, I suddenly thought, I should have worn gloves. Oh well, perhaps it wouldn't have made a difference. I would still read it, and perhaps that was even worse. I repeated the ritual that had almost become habit, carrying the paper into my father's study, placing it on the desk, then using the kitchen knife to cut the strings. The newspaper slowly unrolled, and the headline leaped out at me. The collective hunger, mass hysteria, or unknown disease. Following a series of bizarre events that unfolded over just a few days, government officials and medical teams are struggling to find a cure for residents in a small town in upstate New York. At their request, the town's name is not being disclosed. It all started slowly. A few strange reports began appearing on the social media accounts of many residents. Some posts were quite endearing. My little one was so hungry she broke into the pantry and devoured half a box of fresh cereal, a young mother wrote. A witty post read, "If I eat another burger, I swear I'll turn into that purple girl from Willy Wonka," a girl recounted. And on that first day, some also expressed worry. "My child keeps demanding milk, drank 4 bottles straight and is still crying as if not full. What should I do?" Gradually, it seemed the entire town fell into a state of intense hunger. Food delivery orders skyrocketed. Supermarkets were packed by the hour. No one seemed immune to this sudden and paradoxical hunger, and it only got worse. Those at home ate everything they had. Some even ate raw spices or garbage, anything they could get their hands on, just to fill the uncomfortable, painful gnawing sensation in their stomachs. Town residents barely slept for the first few nights, instead continuing to search for anything edible they could touch. Soon, the concepts of self-control and social rules seemed to collapse. Restaurant staff abandoned customers to rush into kitchens, even walk-in freezers, ravenously eating cooked food and raw ingredients. Businesses that didn't sell food were abandoned, while those that did were broken into and plundered. Many couldn't even make it to the door. They sat right on the sidewalk with piles of food and devoured it on the spot. The town's only hospital was overflowing. Those lucky enough to see a private doctor were subjected to a battery of medical tests. They checked everything from parasites like tapeworms to neurological diseases to psychological disorders, and all tests came back negative. The town's water supply was also tested, but nothing was found. It wasn't long before violence erupted. Food was nearly depleted, and anything from canned dog food to garbage bins behind slaughterhouses, even pet cages, was considered potential food. People fought over every morsel of food on the street. Then fists and sticks weren't enough. Soon, someone pulled a knife or a gun, but knives and guns were predictable. What no one expected and was completely indescribable was when people started using their teeth. It took less than a week for that to happen, and once someone did, it seemed everyone else considered it an option. Discarded clothes, stained with blood, appeared everywhere. The town's population was soon reinforced by outsiders, worried friends and relatives, then law enforcement agencies and medical experts. Most of these people were never seen again, and those who did emerge were often hospitalized. Throughout this process, a few social media accounts remained active. Most of them posted incoherent ramblings or nothing at all, just liking everything related to food, then progressing to liking any image of people or pets. However, one account wrote clearly enough for this report to quote, "You all can eat the soul. You absorb it when you eat its flesh. Now we can eat more. To eat something is to make it ourselves. We can eat our own life if we continue. Most of all, we can eat the earth itself. If the sun falls, we can eat that too." Since then, no further information has come from the town. Local police set up roadblocks around the area, isolating it from the outside world. The military was seen. Rumors of gunshots and explosions were heard. More alarmingly, there was a surge in social media posts about uncontrollable hunger in neighboring towns. Government officials said there was nothing to worry about. "It's a social media trend, a sick joke," a representative, whose name was removed, stated. The town's residents are being treated, and there's no risk other towns will suffer similar conditions. As soon as I finished reading, I recoiled from my father's desk as if it had caught fire. This story was worse. Worse than the building edge game, worse than the removal doctor, worse than the new student. If it became real, it was unimaginable, horrific. I grabbed a trash bag from the kitchen and used the knife to sweep the midnight paper and its string into the bag. I carried the bag to my father's backyard, tore the cover off the grill, and dropped the midnight paper into the grill with a dull thud. I twisted open the cap of a lighter fluid bottle and emptied it before the liquid could even ignite from the mouth of the bottle. The black pages began to curl, crumble into tiny particles, and float away. I kept spraying the liquid, but by the time it hit the grill, there was nothing there. The midnight paper vanished in seconds, dissolving into fragments too small for me to see. I slumped onto the armchair in my father's living room. The migraine returned intensely. Everyone was right, I thought. I shouldn't have read it, I should have listened to my father. Because when I turned on the TV, it was on the news channel, and they were talking about a series of encounters with a strange man, a stranger who called himself the Doctor. Friday night, 11:50 p.m. I knew that at this very moment, the latest edition of the midnight paper would appear on the doormat of my parents' house in a few minutes, but I wasn't there. After last time, I decided I wouldn't read the next article, lest it contained something even worse than the hunger. I couldn't let it become real. I didn't want any more blood on my hands. I sat at the rickety card table in my motel room. Every time I typed on my laptop, the table shook, leaning towards the short leg whose exact location I still hadn't identified. I didn't even care. I was counting the minutes. Each time I hit refresh on the search page of the Herx High School website, Stephanie Carson was in the search bar. I received the midnight paper with the Building Edge Game article exactly at midnight on Friday, September 11th. 1 week later, at midnight on Friday, September 18th, I witnessed a girl jump to her death. I read the midnight paper with the Removal Doctor article exactly at midnight on Wednesday, September 16th. 1 week later, at midnight on Wednesday, September 22nd, I heard about the Removal Doctor for the first time on the local news. This meant that 1 week after receiving the paper, whatever was printed in it would become real. If I was right, tonight, at midnight, Stephanie Carson would become real. She would suddenly appear on the Herx High School website as if she had always attended there. There would be no memorial, no news of a tribute or commendation, just a few pages about the school's most outstanding students. Midnight, the exact moment I hit refresh, I heard 3 knocks on the door of my motel room. What? No way, but it was true. I opened the door, and there, on the dirty carpet right in front of my room, was a roll of black paper tied with black string. I grabbed a plastic bag, originally holding some snacks I bought at the gas station, put on a pair of rubber gloves, and used barbecue tongs. The midnight paper dangled from the end of the tongs. Its strange static electricity seemed to still penetrate the rubber, making the hairs on my arms stand up. I dropped the paper into the plastic bag and tied it shut, then put that bag into 2 more layers of bags for good measure, throwing it all into the trash bin next to the ice machine. When I returned, the motel's crappy internet had finally finished loading the website. There were 10 results for Stephanie Carson. I gripped the edge of my card table. Was I too late? Was it not tonight? A few minutes later, I cautiously opened my motel room door. The dirty carpet outside the door was empty, no new midnight paper. I smiled. Maybe I had truly gotten rid of it. Maybe not reading it was the way to make it leave you alone. I went straight to the trash bin. The bags wrapped around the midnight paper were still there. It hadn't vanished on its own. I nodded, then got into my car. By the time I reached the affluent part of town, it was cold and blindingly bright. Streetlights reflected on every surface, bouncing back from thousands of different points of light directly into my eyes. The migraine returned, flaring up intensely. I was getting used to it now. I chugged some more soda and squinted. Tonight was going to be long. I stopped the car and pulled my phone from the dashboard mount. On the screen was something I wasn't proud of: Stephanie Carson's Instagram account. It had taken me less than an hour to find it. I won't write the name here, but her account was just a combination of her name and volleyball jersey number, and it wasn't set to private. Scrolling through a few photos, I saw Stephanie with her group of friends in front of a house that could only be described as excessively luxurious. It was like Cinderella's castle, if it were attached to a street. I didn't know the exact address, but there was one photo of Stephanie standing in front of a street sign. Same group of friends, same clothes. It was too easy. 2 photos, taken back to back, one in front of the house, one in front of the sign. That very street sign was right in front of me, and a few meters away was Stephanie's Cinderella castle, and one of the upstairs rooms was lit. I circled the block a few times, arranging the story in my head. I had to warn Stephanie about Mark Bailey, who she must already know, but then she would ask why I knew these things. I still didn't have a satisfactory explanation. I could show her my posts here, but imagine knocking on someone's door and telling a girl, "I just posted on Reddit about your murder." I'd be in a psychiatric isolation room the next morning. I told myself, I don't need to be logical. I don't even need to talk about those posts. I just need to knock on the door and say I was driving by and saw a suspicious guy lurking outside her window. She'll think I caught Bailey, and she'll call the police. So why don't I just call the police myself? Because they would ask many difficult questions, and so would she. I sighed. There seemed to be no way to do this without looking as creepy as Mark Bailey. I stepped onto the doorstep, held my breath, and knocked. The knock echoed dully in the night, probably amplified 100-fold by the late hour. Still no movement or light from inside. I knocked again, a little louder. A few seconds passed. Still nothing. Out of options, I pressed the doorbell. The electronic chime resonated through the house, no different from dropping a bomb. A light came on, then 2, then the entire first floor lit up. I heard soft footsteps from inside the house, as if on a carpeted floor. Then the deadbolt clicked. The door swung open, and something hit me on the head. "Wake up, creep," a girl's voice said. I opened my eyes, then quickly closed them again. Just a fleeting glimpse of the world around me was enough. Everything was a blurry white. Something cold and hard hit my cheek, sending fireworks across my vision. I said, "Wake up." I opened my eyes again. This time, things were less blurry. I blinked until the person in front of me came into focus. There she was, holding what looked like a metal sculpture, Stephanie Carson. Then she said sarcastically, "I'm afraid I hit you too hard. So, do you want to tell me why you've been circling my house for over an hour?" "Mark Bailey," I said, my voice hoarse, barely more than a whisper. There was a metallic taste in my mouth, spreading to my lungs. My God, she must have hit me hard. "Great, my stalker has friends now." "No, not friends. He's going to kill you tonight." The words came out more clearly. I should have been satisfied, but then I realized I couldn't feel my hands anymore. Looking down, I saw why. My wrists were tightly bound to the chair arms with layers of tape. Good heavens, did she use the whole roll for each arm? Then Stephanie said something that made me forget all about my bruised wrists. "I know." "What?" I asked, my voice distant and slow, as if coming from a broken speaker across the room. "He's been watching me for a long time. He broke into the house last week. I just got a restraining order against him. He's about to figure it out." "I know, right? He's about to go completely insane. Let the violence commence." I remembered Mark Bailey's account in the newspaper that Stephanie had escaped and stood by the kitchen knives instead of running, as if provoking Bailey to use them to stab her. At the time, I just thought it was the ramblings of a murderer. I cleared my throat. "You're not going to stop him. You don't want to." Stephanie rolled her eyes as if I had annoyed her. In fact, I was annoying her. "Either way, I'll be back. I mean, not this me, but it doesn't matter. My fake parents will probably notice this version of me a little more. The thing now is to figure out what to do with you. If my fake parents come back, they'll just neutralize you and throw you in an acid vat." "Fake parents? What's that name you call them?" "They're not my parents, you understand? They're like soulless puppets, not real parents. Do I have to explain everything to you? Okay, fine. If I untie you, will you leave quietly?" "But what about Mark?" "Oh, forget Mark Bailey. Who cares? Do you think I'm the first version of myself to be killed? Is this the first time I've wanted to be killed?" I was speechless. That was the last thing I expected her to say. I still couldn't feel my hands. Finally, I spoke. Stephanie nodded. She picked up a pair of scissors from a table nearby. That's when I first took a good look around. The walls were stark white, bare, and there were rows of tables filled with laboratory equipment. The scene resembled a modern research facility, the kind where deadly viruses might be created, or dinosaurs resurrected, or multiple versions of the same teenage girl cloned. Stephanie cut the tape around my wrists. I winced. Blood rushed back into the bruises, hot as acid. "You can't let Bailey kill you," I said slowly, standing up. "Who are you?" "A teacher from Roslyn High." "Didn't you go to Roslyn?" I asked. "No, that was Monica and Natalie. Stupid to send two of us to the same school, right? No wonder Bailey went crazy." "So you're not the same person as them?" "Good heavens, you ask all these questions and haven't answered any of mine yet." I told her my name and everything about the midnight paper and my posts. I showed her my phone. It was then that I witnessed the strange intelligence Bailey had mentioned. Stephanie's face lit up. I could almost see millions of super complex gears turning in her head. "Wormhole hypothesis could explain it," she finally said, then shook her head, dismissing it. "Ridiculous wormhole simulation. But yeah, you said you got a newspaper tonight and it's still in the trash can, right?" "Yes," I replied, starting to guess her intention. "Let me see it." "I don't think that's a good idea. Touching it, inhaling its smoke, or trying to burn it isn't a good idea either," Stephanie said. "You're right," I reluctantly admitted. We went from room to room in the basement. I saw shelves filled with occult books, just as Mark Bailey had mentioned. "Those are mine," Stephanie said. "You're not ruling anything out, are you?" I shrugged. I didn't know what she meant. Then I checked my phone. My heart skipped a beat. 4 a.m. Mark Bailey would arrive any moment now. Stephanie didn't notice. She moved so fast she was a blur. By the time I reached the bottom of the stairs, she was already in the kitchen. Just then, I heard a man's voice. Mark Bailey's voice. "What are you? Are you Monica?" Then, as quickly as it appeared, his voice cut off. I flew up the stairs, skidding into the kitchen. There, on the tiled floor, Mark Bailey lay in a pool of his own blood. His throat was cut. Stephanie tossed the bloody knife into the sink. "Don't worry," she said. "My fake parents will take care of it. Where's your car parked?" Near dawn, we stood in front of the trash can. I pulled out the plastic bags. Stephanie's face lit up as she saw the black roll of paper. Before I could stop her, she tore off the strings and unrolled the newspaper, then frowned. She turned the paper towards me. "Can you read it?" she asked. I nodded. "I don't see anything, just black paper, not a single white letter. I guess anyone who appears in the articles can't read them, because I'm not real. The newspaper created me, just as you thought." She gave a sardonic laugh as she uttered this. "Doesn't that bother you?" "Are you kidding? I'm thrilled. Better to be created by a mysterious newspaper than by those pathetic parents. Read it to me," she ordered. Some of the letters had already started to fade, but I still read it to her. Here's what it said. "The perfect being. Experts call aerial phenomenon indescribable. Only 2 days have passed, but residents of a small town in upstate New York are gradually getting used to it. A strange shape in the sky has not yet disappeared, and it looks like a human. The event began sometime after dawn one morning. It is now almost noon, and the clouds have not dissipated. It's not just a shape," a resident who has lived in the unnamed town her whole life said. "There's a light inside. No matter how dark it gets, something is shining like a tiny sun." This phenomenon is truly bizarre. It's a small, human-like shape in the sky. It has all the parts: a head, 2 arms, hands, and 2 legs, feet. The limbs are splayed at an angle, forming an X shape. "It looks like a person in a Da Vinci drawing," a woman said. She wasn't the only one to make the comparison. Many linked the human figure in the sky to Da Vinci's iconic Vitruvian Man. If it were just an oddly shaped object, it wouldn't have had such a profound impact on the residents. The problem is that it seems to be surrounded by a strange halo, reflecting sunlight in such a way that the entire figure glows. When the sun sets, the halo still shines like a large star, often hidden behind thick clouds. In an age where everyone has a smartphone in their pocket, doubling as an expensive camera, why haven't you heard about this? The answer is simple: it's too far away. "It's only the size of a fingernail," one resident said, holding up her pinky finger to the sky and imagining something floating there. "It's no bigger than a fingernail." A photography expert explained that most phone cameras struggle to capture something so tiny at such a great distance, especially against a bright sky. The result is that most photos circulating on social media only show a blurry dot against a bright white sky. At night, it's even worse. At best, you get a faint halo, at worst, just a dark sky. Meteorologists, astronomers, and aerial phenomenon enthusiasts all believe this phenomenon is merely an optical illusion. "I think it's a kite," a local man with a good telescope said. "A human-shaped kite someone's flying, maybe just as a prank." A meteorologist commented, "It's easily explained. There are countless possibilities, from drones to homemade balloons. It's not natural." Definitely not a meteorite, and certainly not a sign of the apocalypse. So why is this phenomenon called the perfect being? Local TV interviewed groups of observers, and a strange man approached. "There was something off about him," a seasoned reporter recounted. "He kept walking up to the camera while we were interviewing other witnesses and saying he created it, and that it was the perfect being." It sounded ridiculous, but it went viral mostly because people made fun of him. The strange aerial phenomenon, the perfect being, has not yet disappeared. On the contrary, it seems to be growing, as if it's getting closer, a resident said, falling slowly as if it's descending. Some have scientifically studied this steady rate of descent. If it continues to fall at its current speed, it will hit the ground in about a week. A little girl, as serious as if she were working for NASA, said, "But it won't fall here, it will fall in the next town." We'll have to wait and see if this amateur astrologer's prediction is correct. After reading, Stephanie smiled again. "What does it mean?" I asked, accustomed to relying on her superior intellect. "Nothing big," she said, "just that we have a doctor's appointment." Part 6. Around 10 p.m. on Wednesday, Stephanie and I looked rather silly. We had been wandering around that public park for about an hour and a half before finally deciding to give up and go to the next park. This was how we had spent the last 4 days, and how we plan to spend the rest of tonight, going from one public place to another, waiting for a strange man to appear, waiting for the removal doctor to show up. Why do you want to find him? I asked Stephanie. She just rolled her eyes. It was her usual reaction, implying, I knew you'd ask that, and it just proves how stupid you are. You read the article about the removal doctor, didn't you? Remember the end? That silly woman who lost her smile said she saw something on a gurney covered with a sheet. She also thought she heard the doctor muttering something about it being almost complete. I interrupted. Stephanie narrowed her eyes. All right, lesson learned. She doesn't like to be interrupted, especially by someone who finishes her sentences. Yes, not as stupid as I look. So, the perfect being is what he's creating, you understand? Those people who came to him, or rather, those idiots who asked him to remove something they didn't want inside them, he removed it for them and then chose something of theirs in return. I think he took their most excellent parts, the best of them, to assemble the perfect being. He's the crazy guy in the article about the perfect being. I nodded, then frowned. So why is it in the sky? Stephanie rolled her eyes again. If I knew, we wouldn't be trudging around like these idiots, sweating our butts off. We have to find him, strap him to a gurney, and stop him from creating the perfect being. Stop him, why? Good heavens, you really are an idiot. The hunger will become real exactly at midnight tonight. Next will be the perfect being. I'm guessing they're all connected somehow. Everything, including me. Maybe the doctor hasn't completed it yet. Who knows, maybe we can stop him. Remember the last girl in the Building Edge game article? She jumped and even tried to drag a friend with her. She pointed to the sky and screamed. What's the other thing we know will appear in the sky? She held out her hand to me, as if demanding the last piece of a puzzle she was generously letting me hold. The perfect being, I said. Bingo. We decided to change things up a bit. The article said that the removal doctor could appear in any public place. Plus, we were hungry, so choosing a location was influenced by that. There were 2 vending machines in a noisy public parking lot. That's high-end cuisine right there, I said. We lowered our masks to eat right next to them. So, I began, feeling I should make conversation with this girl who had existed for less than 24 hours and was born from a strange newspaper. Your fake parents, aren't they following us? No, Stephanie said. They obey me. I told them to dispose of Bailey's body and guard the house. Maybe they also had to do some chores for my damned parents. Chores? What kind of chores? Collecting materials for new versions of me. Don't ask me what or where from. They don't do it when I'm watching. They just bring home frozen Petri dishes and test tubes of DNA for storage. So your parents don't work right at home. Sometimes, it depends. Generally, I don't know much about those jerks, okay? They don't want me to know. All right, I said. If you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to. I don't, she replied. So, do you want to talk about your father? About how the midnight paper might have killed him? I flinched slightly. I tried to cover it by taking a gulp of soda, but it was a disaster. I don't know. Come on, all the mirrors and TVs were covered, right? Maybe because of some article about monsters in mirrors and TVs or something. Maybe they killed your mother too. Enough, I said. I get it. I've been thinking about that too. You don't have to be so aggressive. Sorry, dismissed. You should finish your Snickers bar too. Why? The doctor's here, Stephanie said, pointing to a silhouette across the parking lot. There, lurking behind the only tree within miles, was a man in black scrubs and a black mask. Before we could even stand up, the removal doctor appeared right in front of us. He moved fast and silently, frightfully so. It seems you two are familiar with my services, the doctor said. He pulled out a small black business card with an address printed in white ink. Seeing it immediately reminded me of the midnight paper. His voice was warm, calm, patient. Somehow, I had the feeling it used to belong to a psychologist. Stephanie swatted the doctor's hand away. I don't need your damn card, because you're going to lead us to your weird clinic right now. The removal doctor nodded. If you wish. Outside, the building looked like an abandoned factory, mostly brick with long smokestacks that hadn't belched smoke in decades. The windows were caked with soot, blocking anyone from looking in or out. I didn't want to think too deeply about why the doctor led us up a ramp through a huge cargo door. It was wide open, unlocked, as if he were expecting guests. We walked through the back door and, as if by magic, stepped into a brand new hospital. The epoxy floors were clean and shiny, the walls pristine white. LED strips ran along the walls and floor. I looked at Stephanie. She seemed to be analyzing every square centimeter, her gaze cold and distant. I wasn't sure if she was looking for structural weaknesses or memorizing every detail to recreate later. There seemed to be dozens of beds in white fabric tents, each with LED strips around its base. Through the fabric, I saw human figures, both men and women, all hooked up to IVs, their limbs or stumps suspended in splints over the beds. We followed the removal doctor to the end of the room. Just as the woman in the article described, there was a series of examination rooms designed for every medical specialty: orthodontics, neurology, orthopedics, cardiology, even rooms labeled psychiatry and psychology. He led us into his office, located right in the center where all the clinic doors converged. In it was a black wooden table, his black leather chair, and 2 black leather chairs for guests. Nothing else. No pictures on the walls, no papers on the table, just the table and the chairs where we were about to sit. The removal doctor sat down, gesturing for us to sit. Stephanie practically leaped into her chair. "All right," she said. "Nice office. Congratulations. Now tell us about the perfect being." I was sure the doctor was smiling beneath his mask. "It seems you know a lot about me." "It's understandable," Stephanie asked, leaning so close to the table that her chin nearly touched the wood. "Because you were my patient, several versions of you, in fact." Stephanie's eyes widened. Her mouth closed, then opened again, but no words came out. I was also speechless. "Wait," I said. "You created Stephanie too, in a way." The doctor chuckled softly. "No, she is not my creation. She is not perfect at all, contrary to what she or her parents think." "You know my parents, they work for you," Stephanie began, but the doctor raised a hand to stop her. "No, I don't know them, nor have I ever worked with them, but I know their work is futile. Too many limitations, too much wasted potential. Still, I must thank them. Without them, I wouldn't have been able to complete my creation." Stephanie lunged across the table, grabbing his black lab coat collar. "Spill it, from the beginning, now." "I don't mind. No need for your Harvard, Yale, Stanford threats. The ideal place to find good material. I met you there. Many versions of you agreed to my offer. Some wanted to be less like her, less of what her parents imposed as perfect. I gladly complied. I took the parts that made them special and incorporated them into my creation, little by little. So you see, I know you even better than your parents." Stephanie couldn't take it anymore. She delivered a straight punch to his jaw. He didn't flinch or fall an inch. "What about the thing you created? Where is it now?" "It's complete. It's unlike anyone, even you. When I put the last piece in, it flew into the air, wonderfully beautiful. It will return soon. You will see, and you will thank me." Stephanie slumped back into her chair. I had never seen her look so desperate, as if for the first time she realized she wasn't smart enough, fast enough, strong enough. "Do you know about the midnight paper?" I asked. The doctor shrugged. "Never heard of it." "All right then, you're coming with us," Stephanie said. "I'm going to keep an eye on you until this is over." The doctor nodded. "My work here is done anyway." It was past midnight. We returned to the motel. All the way, Stephanie was silent. The doctor said nothing either. It was truly surreal to see them both sitting in the back of my car, like 2 fictional characters who had just stepped into reality for the first time, surveying the world around them and judging it. When we arrived, we found exactly what I had predicted. On the dirty carpet outside the room, another roll of black paper. "Ah," the doctor said, "the midnight paper." Stephanie and I locked the doctor in the motel room, then sat under the hallway lights. She looked eager, a little scared, as she waited for me to unroll the paper and read it aloud. I dismissed the thought of not reading it. It was late now. It was time to read. I regretted it immediately. I began to read to Stephanie. Here's what it said. "Apocalypse, situation in upstate New York deteriorates. It's now a little past midnight, but the sky remains alien to the darkness. It seems local residents guessed correctly. The sky is cracking. There are white streaks stretching endlessly, crisscrossing everywhere. "They look like cracks," a resident said, "like cracks right in the sky and something is about to come through them." We couldn't help but agree. The scene was nightmarish, yet real, and everyone witnessing this absurdity wondered how it came to this. The answer lies in the article we published last Friday. At the time, it seemed like just a quaint story about a strange aerial phenomenon in a small upstate New York town, but we were wrong, very wrong. The object called the Perfect Being, initially a human figure floating in the sky, somewhat resembling Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man with limbs forming an X shape, has been gradually descending since that Friday, falling towards Earth at a steady rate, not accelerating as it normally should. As it gets closer, people realize it's not a human-shaped balloon or a kite or a drone. It's not a prank. Something is seriously wrong. Although its exact size is unclear, the object is about 15 feet, perhaps 20 feet, or over 6 meters from head to toe, and it truly has toes, fingers, and a face. Looking through binoculars or telescopes, this is clear. However, the longer you look, the more your eyes are harmed. "It emits a strange light," an amateur astronomer said. "I looked at it for about half an hour and my right eye went blind. Corneal scarring, at least according to the doctor." No footage or images have captured the entity. It seems its strange light also affects electronic lenses, just as it affects human corneas. "It destroys our cameras," a local news reporter said. "All types of cameras are affected equally. Lenses shatter, electronic devices short-circuit when pointed at it." As it gets closer to the ground, the object has an even stranger effect on people. Residents of the unnamed town knelt when they saw the entity or creature or person up close. It was not uncommon that afternoon to see people prostrate themselves, praying and worshiping the strange phenomenon as a divine entity. Then it glided over the horizon, towards another town. A town currently under police lockdown. "Ammonia leaks," a checkpoint officer said. "Sewage system exploded, causing injuries." "Can't say more, we're fixing it, please stay away." As more and more people from neighboring towns tried to cross the checkpoints and military barricades, the forces stationed there were forced to use tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse them. "They're crazy," a woman shot in the leg with a rubber bullet, fracturing her tibia, recounted. "They fired without warning. On the other side of the barricade, we heard real gunshots. Many of us heard screaming inside the unnamed town." That ammonia leak story is complete nonsense. I'm worried about the people in there. After investigating, we confirmed that this military-sealed town was the same one mentioned in a previous article, where a strange, insatiable hunger outbreak occurred. It seemed the story would end here, as the military would never let us see the entity descend into the hunger-stricken town. But it didn't. A group of extremists decided to ram their cars into the barricades, tearing down the fences. They succeeded, despite being fired upon with live ammunition. The cars, like unstoppable battering rams, ripped through metal, wood, and sandbags, creating several gaps large enough for people to squeeze through. And we followed closely behind them. It seemed that the deeper we went into this town, the less the soldiers pursued. Were they afraid of catching something? Suddenly, our masks felt utterly flimsy against what was truly happening here. The scene was horrifying beyond belief. The streets were littered with pools of blood and bodily fluids, about 3 meters in diameter. Everywhere, perhaps hundreds of such spots. We gradually understood these were the traces where residents had fallen and been torn apart. We quickly found the culprits: men, women, and even children. Their bodies were so bloated that their clothes were ripped to shreds. Their bellies were swollen and bruised, oozing blood as if their skin was cracking from the tension of what they had stuffed inside. Their faces were even more horrific. Mouths agape, constantly drooling like elephants, their teeth broken and chipped, gaps crammed with what looked like dried flesh and bone fragments, to the point where their tooth enamel was fractured. It wasn't long before these people attacked the newcomers. They knocked their victims down. We declined to describe further. Some managed to escape, hiding in houses. There, we witnessed firsthand what happened next. The entity landed in the town. Huge, 15, perhaps 20 feet over 6 meters. It had no genitalia, and its sex could not be guessed from its physique or facial features. Its face was exquisitely beautiful, angelic, as if from a Michelangelo painting. Those who witnessed it often burst into tears or knelt, even the bloated ones. They only looked up when its feet touched the ground, and then it smiled. A gentle, welcoming, forgiving smile. And the people rushed forward. They clawed at it with bloodied fingernails, chewed with their broken teeth. Hundreds upon hundreds streamed out of the houses like rabid rats, shoving and trampling each other to bite and tear at the entity's dazzling, golden white skin and flesh. And then, simultaneously, the air began to ripple and crackle, as if with a strange electric current. We saw cars flying into the sky. We saw leaves turn from brown to green, then fall, then grow back, all in the blink of an eye. The grass seemed caught in a continuous life cycle, growing and wilting, rising and falling like waves. Then the first crack appeared in the sky, a dazzling white line as if marking reality breaking apart. Now it was past midnight. Everything was even worse. Nothing remained of the entity, and the people who had devoured it began to transform. Some aged rapidly, their hair growing long in seconds like a bridal veil. Then their bodies disintegrated, withered, and were reborn from their own ashes, first as fetuses, then as infants, babies, and finally, adults again. Others simply vanished silently, leaving a white light crack in the air. Not long after, everything collapsed. Houses tilted and then imploded, as if sucked into microscopic black holes. Reality itself was disintegrating. People were right. Something was coming through from the other side. Something was flickering, starting to overflow through the white light of the cracks in the sky. Something very big. Damn it, Stephanie and I exchanged panicked glances. Part 7. Thursday, around noon. Stephanie, the removal doctor, and I sat in a fast food restaurant. The scene looked like a bad joke. The cloned girl, the crazy doctor, and the madman reading a magical newspaper. I wore sunglasses because the fluorescent lights in the restaurant were making my migraine unbearable. Stephanie and I ordered, but the removal doctor did not. In fact, throughout our time together, I had never seen him eat or order anything. "You don't eat?" I asked. I invited him. He shook his head. "No need, I've already removed it." For some reason, hearing him say that made me lose my appetite. I didn't want to ask more about why he didn't drink water or use the restroom when we stopped along the way. "So, do you know why your creation allowed itself to be eaten like that?" Stephanie asked, her voice having that familiar impatient tone, as if she needed answers urgently, as if this world was always too slow for her, always a step behind. It took the removal doctor a while to answer. He seemed to think very carefully about Stephanie's question. Finally, he shook his head. "It must have wanted to." "Why?" she said. "You said it was perfect, right? So the only purpose of a perfect entity is to want to die." "Your parents also wanted to make you perfect," the doctor said. "And how many versions of you have wanted to die?" Stephanie gritted her teeth. I could almost hear them cracking from where I sat. I intervened to change the subject. "If we can find the town with the hunger epidemic, can you remove it from everyone there?" I asked. He nodded. "If any of them volunteer." "Volunteer?" Stephanie asked. "You can't just take it from them. You're not afraid to take what you want." "This is a delicate process," the doctor said. "For someone to voluntarily offer me one of their attributes is an essential part of how it works." "Do you know why the events in the articles happen? Like, did eating that entity break reality or something?" I asked. "I believe this hunger is a unique quality, much like my own abilities. I can take an attribute and hold it, then transfer it into something else. I think they can eat in such an absolute way that they can swallow an entire set of attributes and integrate it into themselves. In essence, they become what they eat. I only created one version of the perfect being for a reason. More than one, and things would surely attract too much attention. So we just need to stop them from eating the perfect being somehow," I said. Just saying it made my head hurt twice as much. "First, we have to find the right town," Stephanie said. I nodded. 12 hours have passed since the hunger became real. We don't have much time before things get worse. "But it's not until tomorrow night, midnight, that we'll know which town the perfect being will appear over," Stephanie continued. I frowned. "I guess we should just pick a random town, find a hotel there, and wait until tomorrow." In the end, our method for choosing a town was quite simple. At the entrance of the restaurant, there was a rack of maps. Stephanie pulled one out, unfolded it, and placed her finger on the first town that caught her eye. "I'll drive," she declared suddenly. "Do you even know how to?" I stammered, but she cut me off. "If you're asking if I know how to drive, of course I do. If you're asking if I have a license, no. But look at you, pale, wearing sunglasses, squinting at the slightest light. I give up." She was right. My migraine was getting worse by the hour. I just wanted to recline in the passenger seat and close my eyes. We climbed into my beat-up car. Stephanie got into the driver's seat and drove off immediately. "So," I asked, my eyes tightly closed, "are you really a doctor?" The removal doctor didn't answer. Clearly, he wasn't fond of jokes. "Can you remove my migraine?" I asked, half joking, half serious. "Yes," the doctor said. "I don't think that's a good idea," Stephanie interjected. "Yeah, I know," I said. We found a motel along the way as dusk was falling. Stephanie and I had agreed the previous night that we wouldn't leave the removal doctor alone. So, one of us would go out to the restroom or buy food while the other sat guard. Sitting alone with him unnerved me. I hated the way he looked at me, the way he looked at everything, as if studying, measuring, evaluating our worth. I felt relieved when Stephanie returned with dinner, fast food again. Good heavens, I was probably going to gain 10 pounds after all this. "Why did you study chemistry?" I asked Stephanie as she bit into a chicken strip. "I wanted to get degrees in both chemistry and biology. I'm not sure if the other sisters did, but I'm guessing so, because we're annoyingly similar. As for why, I guess it's because my parents used biochemistry to create me and the others, right? I thought studying it would help me understand myself better. It's funny, I remember as a kid I was fascinated by science, always asking for chemistry sets and books about Marie Curie, but I also know I never really had a childhood. I just woke up like this with these fake parents in an empty house." I shuddered. "That's horrible what you went through. I'm so sorry. I can't imagine what that must feel like," I said. Stephanie shrugged. "Whatever. At least I'm not stuck with the people who actually created me, just stuck with these half-assed cloned versions of themselves." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about a town somewhere, maybe nearby, maybe far away, where residents had been tormented by hunger for 24 hours, where food would soon mean nothing. The next day was the same. We just chatted idly and drank coffee. Neither of us had much appetite, which was understandable. By midnight, Stephanie and I stood in the room, our eyes fixed on the door. The removal doctor sat on the bed behind us, still scrutinizing everything as usual. 3 knocks sounded. I waited a few seconds, then opened the door. There, right outside the room, was the familiar black rolled-up paper. "Should we?" I began. "Damn it, just read it," Stephanie said. "I want to know what it says." I nodded, untied the string. The newspaper unrolled, and immediately I felt nauseous. There was only one article on the front page. Where did everyone go? Below the content, there were about 100 lines, each containing exactly 6 words. Where did everyone go? I threw the newspaper into a plastic bag and then stuffed the bag into the room's trash bin. "It didn't help," Stephanie said. "It's all my fault, Jean. I shouldn't have read those papers as my father warned. That's why everything happened." Actually, those papers just predict the future, so reading them or not wouldn't have made a difference. Maybe your father was just warning you not to get involved. Hearing her say that eased my self-reproach a little. Then I suddenly remembered something and ran out of the room. Our room was on the 2nd floor, with a door leading to the hallway and a balcony. Good thing, because right there, hanging in the sky, was something that looked like a star, but brighter than any star I had ever seen. "Hello there, perfect being," Stephanie said. "It's right over the next town," I said, pulling out my phone. I opened the map app, scrolled for a bit. "Yes, that's the name of the town that's infected with the hunger. Got you." "Yeah, but we're missing the most important thing. How the hell do we stop the whole town from eating it?" Stephanie said. "We'll figure something out," I replied. I didn't even notice that the removal doctor had stood right next to me. He was looking up at the sky, eyes wide, mouth curled in excitement. Stephanie pushed him aside. "Just keep looking, doctor, because sooner or later that thing's going to be torn to shreds." Strangely, his smile grew wider. Saturday morning, Stephanie, the removal doctor, and I sat in a small diner. Watching him not eat or drink anything all this time still unnerved me. I tried not to think about it. "I'm going to the restroom," I said. "You watch him, okay?" Stephanie nodded. As I walked out of the restroom, I ran into a chaotic scene. Many people were standing in the middle of the street, pointing up at the sky. There was even a news van and a team of reporters, just as the article described. I quickly returned to my seat, only to find Stephanie sitting alone. "Where is he?" I asked. She turned around to see the empty chair next to her. I quickly threw some money on the table and rushed out the door. We both ran towards the crowd. Everyone was holding up their phones, taking pictures of the sky. I knew, according to the article, that the images captured would only be a blur, but seeing them act exactly as the midnight paper described still sent a chill down my spine. Stephanie called my name, then sprinted towards the news channel's car. "I know you just saw it. There, among a few people talking to the reporter, was the removal doctor. I arrived just in time to hear him say, 'I created it.' He said it was the perfect being." A few people laughed. I couldn't blame them. "Come on," I said, grabbing his arm and pulling him away from the interesting crowd. "Quite interesting," Stephanie said. "A press conference just like in the article." He didn't answer. Stephanie drove the car out of town. I rubbed my forehead. The run to the crowd had made my migraine worse. It was like a living creature, throbbing behind my eyes, stabbing hot needles into my brain. I also felt nauseous, probably from motion sickness. "You look terrible," Stephanie said. "Thanks, more aspirin." I shook my head. "I took 4 this morning." Stephanie whistled. "That's not good, right, doctor?" He said nothing. I started to suspect he had never actually attended medical school. Stephanie turned a corner, and we immediately saw a roadblock, exactly as described in the article. Sandbags, about half a dozen military personnel, and unmarked trucks. "Hey," Stephanie said. "Isn't this a bit early? I don't remember the article saying they'd block the road like this." "The perfect being is real, right?" I said, trying to press my temples to suppress the pain. "The timelines are different now," the doctor said honestly. "Last week, but he already finished the entity, no need for months to gather parts like in the article." "I thought the timelines had to match," I said. "Whatever is in the paper becomes real when the paper comes out." "Yeah, so now we can't get through. Those guys look serious," Stephanie said. "Wait a minute, the article came out last Wednesday at midnight, right? It said the entity descended that afternoon, meaning Thursday afternoon," I said. "That's great," Stephanie said. "I guess we all know when reality is going to be flushed down the drain then." Part 8. Wednesday night, 10 p.m. The sky above me was black and ominous, but not cloudy enough to obscure the glowing area I knew to be the perfect being. For the past few days, Stephanie, the removal doctor, and I had been watching it, almost obsessively as it slowly descended, like a very slow-moving, yet just as destructive, falling star. The wind blew hard, whipping across my face like invisible hands. I didn't mind the cold. It was a welcome sensation on my throbbing forehead. I took another step, feeling the concrete crunch under my shoes, then reached the edge of the building. Below, the cold black asphalt street was like a second night sky, tiny specks of gravel sparkling in the tar like stars. I lifted one foot over the edge and everything began. A flood of images rushed into my brain. Not like a dream, not like an imagined thought, entirely different. They were clearer than any dream I had ever had, as real as reality itself, and carried a strange, heavy sensation, as if I were witnessing truth etched into the very fabric of the universe. I saw rows of houses, shattered windows, blood spattered across driveways. One house was ablaze, a column of smoke rising. I saw a group of people, eyes wide, mouths agape, teeth stained with blood, lips torn to shreds. I saw a dazzling light source, something with arms and legs, and what the hell are you doing? I opened my eyes, realizing only then that I had closed them. I turned to see Stephanie stepping out of the door leading to the rooftop. We were standing on the roof of the shabby motel we were staying in. "You left me with that lunatic to come up here and play this game?" Stephanie asked. "Old man," I began. Stephanie threw the door open, and the removal doctor stepped out onto the concrete roof. "Truly idiotic, utterly stupid," Stephanie said. "You don't know how the building edge game affects people, nor if participating in it makes the illusions come true." "Yeah, but they will come true, right? Both you and him. I've read about both of you in the newspaper." "Great, thanks for comparing me to this guy," Stephanie grumbled. The doctor walked to the edge of the rooftop. I worried he was going to try the building edge game, but he just stood there, looking at the light in the sky, his creation, his perfect being. "Can you talk to it?" I asked the doctor. He shrugged. "I haven't tried. It can hear and understand speech. It has all its organs in the right places. I implanted it with the ability to speak 10 languages. Whether it uses them or not is up to it. Good, I said, turning to Stephanie. Maybe we can talk to it, explain what will happen if it lands. But if that's its plan, talking won't change anything, Stephanie shrugged. I guess we'll have to wait and see, I said. Suddenly, a coughing fit seized my throat, making me cough violently. Are you okay? Stephanie asked. I think I have a cold or something, I replied. Let's go back to the room. It's almost time for the new paper to arrive. 2 hours later, I sat on the motel bed, a wet towel draped over my eyes. The migraine was worse. It felt like a mountain range that had just reached a valley, only to have a new jagged peak pierce my brain. Almost constantly, my hands cradled my temples, rubbing them. I had started to feel so nauseous that I hadn't eaten anything since noon. We should go to a medical facility or something, Stephanie said. I can't believe I'm saying this when we have a doctor right here. He's not a normal doctor, I groaned, one hand rubbing my forehead. Besides, if I get in a car now, I'll throw up. Just let me rest a bit and it'll get better. It always does. Yeah, Stephanie replied, and we'll pretend this has nothing to do with the newspaper. I shrugged. Either way, it's late now. We have to stop the perfect being. That's more important than any headache, no matter how horrible. But you're not reading the next paper this time. I don't think it will come, I said, putting the towel back over my eyes. Why? It's already 12:15. The paper has never been late like this. I heard Stephanie open the room door, then close it. You're right, she finally said. There's nothing out there. Is that not good news? I asked. No, I guess if there's still reality, then the paper has something to predict. If there's no reality, there's no reason for them to deliver papers anymore. We turned off the lights and went to sleep shortly after. The next morning, when I opened the door, there was still no newspaper. For some reason, not seeing it made me uneasy. I had grown accustomed to it, to waiting for it, despite the headaches and the horrors that followed. Now, without it, the world suddenly seemed duller, more mundane. But I knew that thought was foolish. This afternoon was the apocalypse. That was too dramatic. The kind of drama no one wanted. 9 a.m. Crowds began to gather. People from all corners, abandoning shops and even their cars on the street, converged in the middle of the road. No one dispersed them because the police also came out to join them. Every face, every phone, every gaze was directed skyward. I knew what they were looking at, but I still had to see for myself. In the sky, a bright dot like a star, bright enough to be seen in daylight, but I knew it wasn't. By noon, the entity was close enough to resemble a second sun, a larger sun in the shape of a human. Through my sunglasses, I could see it had a head, arms, and legs. I had seen it these past few days, but the chilling sensation was the same as the first time. It just hovered, not falling very slowly, not bothering with anything, like an absent-minded diver sinking to the bottom of the ocean, pulled down by gravity and the Earth's invisible attraction. It seemed the whole town was out on the street. The buildings around us looked deserted, windows dark, front doors often wide open. No one took advantage of this moment to steal. All eyes remained fixed on the sky. 1 p.m., the entity was close enough to be clearly seen without squinting. It was enormous, probably about 6 meters. Actually, I guessed it would be that size, not just from the article, but to be clearly seen from that altitude, it had to be extremely large. Yet it still exuded a delicate grace, not cumbersome or heavy. It wasn't curled up or spinning, waiting for impact. It maintained its posture, head slightly tilted up, feet pointing down, like a ballerina with arms raised in a V shape. It seemed angelic, divine, but also very wrong. Shouldn't it appear somewhere else? I was forced to turn away. It was too bright. My eyes ached. My migraine pulsed tenfold. A wail began shortly after, like a low hum, an unconscious sound spreading through the crowd, as if everyone had tried to hold back tears, but as it drew closer, they couldn't anymore. Many collapsed, crying like people making the sign of the cross. Some clasped their hands in prayer, others raised their hands reverently to the sky. Very few wore masks. Perhaps many thought this was an angel descending to heal the world, eradicate the pandemic, and bring peace. It will wipe out the disease, Stephanie muttered, but along with everything else. Crazy. Immediately, a man turned around and glared at her as if she had committed sacrilege. No swearing next to something so divine. Things were about to get worse. By 2 p.m., the entity was low enough for everyone to clearly see where it would land, not where we were. A murmur passed through the crowd. They had been so engrossed in contemplation that they hadn't thought about where it would land. Now they understood, it wouldn't land here. They were furious. Hundreds of people rushed towards their cars, shoving each other, completely oblivious to their own safety, as if they had forgotten they were flesh and blood. Some elbowed others in the face, some punched. Everything was an obstacle, and there was only one goal: the town on the other side. Just like in the article, Stephanie, the doctor, and I jumped into my car. I started the engine, shifted into drive. Boom! Something slammed hard into the driver's side door. My body was thrown to one side, my neck constricted by the seatbelt. My body flew across to the passenger seat. My head rang, hurting even more. I turned to Stephanie. She was similar, clutching her neck where the seatbelt had dug in. "What the hell was that?" she croaked. "I don't know." My head felt like it would explode. My brain seemed to transform into a frantic beast, pounding inside my skull. "Got him it!" I coughed violently, a burning pain tearing through my chest as if my lungs were ripping apart. I turned to the removal doctor. He wasn't wearing a seatbelt, curled up on one side of the car, but his eyes were still open. I saw him stretch, his joints cracking, then he simply shuffled back to his original spot. He seemed completely unharmed. "Are you okay, doctor?" I asked. He nodded. "No lasting injuries to either of you that I can see. I can remove the pain." "No need," I replied, making sure everyone was safe. I looked out the window. The glass was shattered. Whatever had hit us had severely dented the driver's side door and pushed the glass inward. The windshield hadn't broken, only cracked, but there were still fragments of glass clinging along the driver's seat like large hailstones. The car door creaked and rattled, then swung open on its own. I heard tires squealing, metal grating on metal as the other vehicle reversed and hit a streetlight. It still wasn't stopping. It roared away. It was a police patrol car. The driver was too eager to get to the other town, caring nothing for us. I couldn't nod for fear of the pain stabbing through me. I shifted into drive, trying in vain to look in the rearview mirror, and drove off. The headache suddenly flared up as my car left the town. The road swayed with every beat of my heart. The world before me was blurry, dazzling, noisy. Car horns blared. Some cars crashed into streetlights or each other. Utter chaos. Soon, I understood the reason for the military barricade ahead, hidden behind the crowd. The cars in front were abandoned, windows down, drivers merging into the screaming, shoving crowd. "Get out of the car," I said. Stephanie nodded. As soon as we were out, we were torn apart by the crowd. Shouting, cursing. They demanded to cross the checkpoint, claiming it was a conspiracy to prevent them from reaching the entity. They didn't know. I desperately searched for an unusual face. "What are you looking for?" Stephanie yelled. The crowd shoved us, pulling us towards the checkpoint, whether we wanted to or not. According to the article, a reporter seemed to recount everything, but I didn't see anyone strange. No one looked that way in any of the places where events had occurred. "You're right," I said. "I hadn't thought of that. Maybe that person also looks normal." Stephanie turned to look at the surging sea of people moving closer to the soldiers. A guy shoved me from behind, nearly knocking me down. Stephanie grabbed my hand, pulling me up with just one hand. The article about her also said she was stronger than she looked. I turned and grabbed the removal doctor by the collar. "What are you doing?" Stephanie asked. "Get lost and don't stay here long, damn it!" Stephanie exclaimed, her eyes wide. She also remembered the article. Stephanie grabbed me at the same time I grabbed the doctor's hand. She extended one arm in front, the other gripping my wrist tightly, then weaved through the crowd, disappearing. I heard her grunt as she pushed a guy in the chest with her palm. He crumpled as if she had punched him with her whole body. I dug my feet in so she wouldn't drag me. My arm ached from pulling the doctor along. It took almost half an hour, but Stephanie finally broke free of the human wave, pulling me and him onto the sidewalk. I rubbed my wrists. Her bruised fingers were a small matter. The new pain was less than the headache. "Oh God," I gasped, looking at the crowd, which seemed to have doubled in size. They were even angrier. The people at the front were screaming at the military personnel. The presence of guns seemed not to deter them. A female soldier tightened her grip around her rifle. The surrounding soldiers followed suit. The entire group was like a complex muscle under immense pressure. They were about to snap. I couldn't clearly see who fired, but I'm sure the soldiers pulled the triggers. The crowd let out a small, trembling gasp, but it didn't stay small or trembling for long. Immediately, furious shouts erupted, spreading like wildfire. People became even more agitated, moving closer, fists clenched. Bang, bang, this time I clearly saw the guns. Almost all of them fired simultaneously. Those who were hit fell, then got back up just seconds later. No blood, only scrapes and unnaturally twisted joints. Rubber bullets. A series of dull thuds echoed through the crowd. White smoke billowed out, engulfing groups of people as if erasing them. Their coughing and choking from the tear gas remained. I suddenly realized the soldiers were all wearing gas masks. A guy ran to a car, opened the door, and jumped into the driver's seat. Several others followed suit. I turned away, knowing what was about to happen. Tires screeched, engines roared, bodies slammed into metal. The screams were horrifying, filled with shock and pain. The first car absorbed a volley of live rounds but still rammed through the checkpoint. The second, the third did the same. "Go," Stephanie yelled, grabbing my hand again. I pulled the doctor. Stephanie weaved through the crowd, easier this time because fewer people blocked the way, but harder because of the blood and body fragments obstructing our path like broken branches. She pulled us through a gap in the fence next to an overturned car, its engine roaring and smoking like a mechanical insect. We kept pushing forward. The scenery was too bright, too noisy, too chaotic. My head pounded as if being hammered. White-hot claws tore at my brain. A thick darkness gradually obscured my vision. I don't know when we reached the town, but when we arrived, my first impression was the eerie silence. After all the shouting and coughing, it was as if the world had been muted. Someone had turned the volume to 0. I opened my eyes and wished I hadn't. The streets were covered in reddish-brown streaks and smears extending up the sidewalks. Windows were shattered, house doors destroyed. The metallic tang of dried blood hung in the air. Stephanie said. "Things are really messed up." She was in the driver's seat. She insisted on driving, and she drove even smoother than I did. I didn't doubt she could learn any skill. "Doctor," I began. "The removal doctor has his own ritual," she said. "He asks customers what they want removed: memories, bad habits, diseases, then take something else from the customer as payment. You read a lot of newspapers and it created these black markings inside you. You asked him to remove them, thinking that was the source of the articles coming true. Bad idea. I warned you. There was something else in you that made you a beacon for the paper. He took that as payment, then implanted it into everyone else in the neighborhood. As a result, they received papers, read them, and every article became real." I stared. "You're about to say something similar, aren't you? You told me everything. You want me to find a way to fix it, right?" She sighed. "I don't know, not yet, but oh," she rolled her eyes. "You're going to remind me that I'm super smart, a perfect product to solve this problem for you, aren't you? I'm not a computer. You're no better than the others." "Sorry," I said. "I'm not thinking straight. It's not that I want to dump everything on you, it's just that having someone to brainstorm with is better." "Yeah," she chuckled softly. "I'm glad to be alive too. First, let's find that doctor, then we'll figure it out. He might still be in that building." "Exactly, I'm driving." Oh, her eyes widened. She swerved the steering wheel to the next lane. The reason was clear. A group of people, blazing fiercely, walked in the middle of the road. No fire spread anywhere else, no houses, no cars, because the flames on them came from another source. My neighbor once told me about an article about someone burning, then it spread to a family. Now it's more than 2 people. "Another article?" Stephanie asked. I nodded. "Lucky I'm just the new student, not a fire starter. Doesn't look fun. It's spreading. First one person, then a family, now a group of 20. Probably spread through the station. Keep your distance from them." Of course, we stopped the car outside the warehouse where we first met the doctor. Based on the article, Stephanie went in first, rifle slung over her shoulder, ready. "Are you sure a gun will work?" I asked. She shrugged. "We'll see. Nothing can prepare you for the smell inside." It was a mix of rust, decay, and rotting flesh. I immediately felt sick, collapsing and vomiting until my stomach was empty. Stephanie paused, closed her eyes, and inhaled deeply once, twice, 3 times, as if breathing in fresh air. She learned to control her breathing in moments. Her ability to progress quickly was truly astonishing. Inside, it resembled a modern hospital, pristine white walls, glossy floors, with signs pointing to different departments: cardiology, dermatology, neurology, urology, gynecology, psychiatry, oncology, dentistry. These phrases hinted at what the doctor could remove and install. We found him in the adjoining warehouse, busily working on something enormous: a mass of flesh cobbled together from hundreds of limbs, organs, and tissue, haphazardly stitched and sewn. He stood amidst the flesh, his hands plunged deep, manipulating frantically. "Stop right there," Stephanie shouted, pointing her gun. "Get away from that monstrosity." The doctor turned to look at us with a nostalgic expression. "Oh, I suppose you two have also returned, just like me." "Yeah," Stephanie said. "Nice to see you. Come down here and talk." "What is he doing?" I asked, struggling to suppress my anger. "It's not the perfect being." "No," the doctor replied. "Fascinating, isn't it?" "Cut the crap," Stephanie said tersely. "But get down here now. We need you. Why did you do this?" I asked, gritting my teeth. "You took the traces from inside me and spread them to the whole neighborhood, forcing them to receive the papers. Why?" He shrugged. "We are all created by the paper. I was trying to make the perfect being, so I thought spreading the paper more, perhaps someone or something would help me transcend, maybe even more than the entity." "All right," Stephanie said. "Come down and help us fix this mess you've caused." The doctor raised his hands in surrender. On his fingers were strange instruments: bone, sinew, flesh, metal, glass. "I'm almost done," he said, pressing one hand into his head. "Good heavens," Stephanie exclaimed. I understood what he was doing. "I thought the world deserved the perfect being," the doctor said. "But no, it deserves this." He yanked his hand out, pulling a small clump of flesh from his brain. His body grew pale, rapidly losing weight. It wasn't a tumor, because without it, he was dying, shriveling up. It was the crucial, final piece to be attached to the monstrous mass, the imperfect being. "What?" I was confused, too tired to understand anymore. "Don't you see?" She raised her gun. "People asked him to remove bad things in exchange for good things. He assembled all the good things into the perfect being. So where did all the bad stuff go? The imperfect being," I cursed. Stephanie pulled the trigger. The doctor's hand flew off, but he was incredibly fast. He managed to transfer that clump of flesh to his other hand, then knelt, pressing it into the monstrous mass below. "Finished, but not enough." Bang! Stephanie shot him in the head, blowing it apart. "Stephanie," I exclaimed in horror. "We needed him to restore everything, to take back the traces he spread." "He would only create something worse." I stopped him, but it was too late. Everything changed in a flash. The air grew cold and empty as if it had shattered. The monstrous mass twitched, then lifted, tearing through the roof. It floated, displaying hundreds of patchwork limbs flailing, reaching out to the world in a chaotic flurry of probes. Something flew through the wall and slammed into the mass. A burning human body, then two, three, an entire group of burning people merged. Then a walking streetlight, an inverted house, a membrane. Everything from the articles my neighbors read was now absorbed into the imperfect being, making it grow larger. I became a target too. Both I and the doctor couldn't stop it. "It's true, I'm useless," Stephanie said. "Imperfect." Then the doctor's body was sucked into the entity. "Stephanie," I realized, "you're imperfect, but your cursed parents gave you abilities without needing the doctor. You saw him do it. We're saving the world." She watched him assemble the imperfect being. "I didn't," she screamed, pulled by an invisible force towards the mass of flesh. "You saw him place the removed attributes. You learned super fast, right? I saw his technique, how he removed them." She released my hand, flying into the mass of flesh before I could even shout again. Stephanie vanished because of me. The sound of shattering echoed, and like the perfect being, tearing reality, this opposite entity did the same. Because as the doctor said, everything has attributes. Combining too many bad attributes into one creature breaks the world. I suddenly understood why the newspaper targeted my mother, my father, then me. It wanted to kill me before I read it because it foresaw the future, a week in advance, knowing I would read this series of articles, bringing everything to destruction. My family's life was nothing compared to keeping reality intact. It gave me another chance to fix things, but I failed. I closed my eyes, feeling the world shatter around me. Then everything seemed to snap back together. The air cleared as if someone had twisted it into place. "The imperfect being," groaned 1,000 voices, 1,000 heartbeats, 1,000 writhing limbs, then it broke apart. Fingers fell, eyeballs fell, guts and blood spilled, along with distorted traces of habits, memories, routines. All gone. There, only Stephanie remained, not a drop of blood on her, completely intact. She looked at her hands. On each finger were some of the doctor's strange instruments. Then they vanished. "I did it," she smiled faintly. "It only took me 5 minutes to restore order." She summoned the instruments from thin air, manipulated the empty space, and then a pile of black tar fell to the ground, the same kind that newspaper readers carried. I didn't interrupt. When she was done, she explained. "It's hard to explain," she said. "But inside the people here, there's a mark that makes them receive the paper. The doctor transferred that mark to everyone. I removed it." The next day, no one knocked. The night after that, no one either. Stephanie said the newspaper still exists, the mark is still somewhere. She even saw a few people who had it, but she didn't dare remove it anymore. She never wanted to remove anything from anyone again. A few weeks later, I drove to where Stephanie's parents' house used to be. The door opened. Greeting me was a girl who looked similar to Stephanie, but clearly wasn't her. In the mansion now were dozens of versions, no longer wearing white. Each was slightly different. "Hello," Stephanie called out, waving me to the dining table. A few other girls were eating, reading, talking. Most of them were smiling. "What are you going to do now?" I asked. "I'll be here for a while," she replied, "helping my sisters find their own lives." I looked at the other girls. Different. Not exactly identical, same face, same figure, same eye color, but their hair, clothes, and demeanor were different. They were sisters, not soulless clones. "Not going to start a company and take over the world?" I teased. Stephanie chuckled. "No, that's easy, it's boring." As for me, I went home, cleaned up my father's house, preparing to sell it. Maybe I'll go back to my old apartment. Maybe I'll sell everything and move to another country when things settle down. Wherever I go, Stephanie and I will remain friends, always vigilant when things turn bad. But I know one thing for sure. Wherever I am, I will never open the newspaper again, no matter what color paper it's printed on. If you hear 3 knocks on your door at midnight and see a rolled-up black newspaper on your doormat, don't touch it, don't read it. You will regret it if you do.